that they were having frustrations with me, and I said, well, do you have a mouse? And they said, no, I wasn't using it. I was just using, and when they were trying to orbit around and all that other stuff, yeah, that external mouse is very, very key. So I agree with what you said there.
Yep. Yep. And once you start playing around with it, you'll see exactly what we're talking about with that. Now, I will say I have, I've done Google SketchUp drawing on my personal MacBook with a mouse, a finger pad thing, and it can be done. It's just very cumbersome, and quite frankly, it sucks a little bit. So again, if you can have an external mouse, it's really handy. Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
So just real quick as a follow up to that, my kids are using iPads, and I have the fortunate use of the Apple Pencil, but my kids aren't going to have access to those. So with that, it's going to be pretty difficult if they're using SketchUp for an iPad with their finger.
Yep, it will be difficult, but not impossible. And I'm not entirely familiar with everything iPad, but I mean, I know what an Apple Pen is. But even if they have a stylus of any kind, it's going to probably help. But yes, ideally you would have an external mouse. Okay, so first thing I wanted to do is to just show you that this is not Google SketchUp. While I've had some previous communications with Ryan, who is this past year been tasked with teaching a drafting class for the first time, predominantly using a program called SolidWorks, which you may have heard of. SolidWorks is absolutely a platform and a software that's used in industry. But I wanted to just make mention and show you that so is SketchUp. SketchUp has absolutely been applied in real businesses. And I'm going to show you two quick examples of proof of that. I'd like to draw your attention to this photo. Hopefully you're seeing that on the screen right there. This is a $247,000 landscape hardscape project down in the Selinsgrove area. This is a property adjacent right next to the Selinsgrove Airport. This job was sold with a drawing from Google SketchUp. And very similarly, this is a job, this is a $238,000 landscape hardscape, and some of it wraps around the back of the house here. This job was sold down in the Halifax area, again, off of a Google SketchUp drawing. So Google SketchUp is not just a frou-frou, something for teachers to keep high school students busy with. This free software platform, which is, you know, what we used, has sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work that I am personally aware of. So there's absolutely an application for this in the real world. Ryan, I'm sure, has had some experience with some local industry that perhaps uses SolidWorks and 3D drawing. A lot of companies, a lot of manufacturing companies, JLG lifts, Volvo, even some more smaller size metal fabrication businesses and contractors are doing a lot of the 3D drawing in-house because A, they've found that it saves money, and B, it allows them to make changes and alter project plans and stuff immediately versus waiting on a third-party drafting firm or company to do it for them. And it allows for immediate exchange between company and client about changes that are going to be made to a project plan or a project drawing. So students leaving our schools and going out into the world with maybe not expert level skills, but knowing the basics of how to utilize these various 3D drawing platforms is something that makes them very marketable in today's job market. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there. So I put a link in the chat box to the intro activity that I'm going to be running you through very quickly. And I'm not going to be able to keep this up the whole time because I need to be able to see what I'm doing in SketchUp. But it looks like this, and it's a step-by-step guide to creating just a basic like building house structure. And what I did was I cut out the buttons and the icons that need to be clicked on for each step. And when dimensions need to be put into the dimension window, I've snipped out images of that because I understand that just attending, I did the session like this at PAAE conference last year. I do this with the AEE 350 students on campus. And one session does not necessarily enable you to and empower you to go out with your students and help them through all of the stumbles and fumbles that that they're going to encounter and questions they're going to have. So there should be the link that I shared in the chat box should take you to this document right here. And if you'd like to follow along in SketchUp, if you've set your account up already, feel free. I don't know that I'm going to necessarily be able to answer too many questions along the way because our time is limited, and I got to show you some of the assignments that I came up with for you as well. So Mr. Brammer, I know, has created his Google or his SketchUp account and had a question about exactly where to begin. So I think, Mr. Brammer, you're asking, you should be maybe at this screen. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So what you want is the SketchUp for the web, for both the free and the paid versions. So if you just click the launch button there, it should take you to a screen that looks awfully similar to the screen that you should be seeing right now. So I'll give folks a second to click that button and maybe get to this spot if you're not there already. And I'm also I have to work off of my phone here because I can't have the directions open and SketchUp at the same time. So if you're following along at home, you should be getting to a screen like this. If you're not, I'd be happy to work with you individually at some point to help you get to this point. But so pretty much all new drawings take you to this screen. Okay, and there's this woman here. I'm just going to click her, and she's just there to kind of give you reference. She's not needed, so I'm just going to click and delete her out. Okay, so on my activity there, step number 1 is we've opened up a new SketchUp drawing file, and now I'm at step number 2, where I'm going to go. I need to start by just drawing a basic rectangle, which is found on the left-hand toolbar over here. If you click that rectangle button, you'll see, and that's the way many of these toolbar buttons function, is you click one and it opens up a bunch of others. I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and in my directions, I'm just placing the cursor. I'm not touching, my hands are completely free. I'm not touching anything, or I'm not clicking anything. I'm just putting my cursor right there, and now I'm clicking, and dragging out a rectangle. Okay. And I'm releasing my mouse button at this point. I'm not touching anything whatsoever. Okay. My hands are again free. I got to move my participant box up here a second. So again, I'm not touching anything. I just clicked, drug out that random rectangle, and I let the mouse button go. So now, as the directions say, down here in this dimensions box, is everybody able to see that dimensions box? Okay. Again, I'm not clicking in it. I'm not clicking in it. Okay. All I'm going to do on my computer keyboard is I'm going to type 35, and you should see the numbers changing down there in that dimension box. Oh, I put inches and I want feet. 35 feet, comma, 25 feet. Okay. And I'm going to hit enter and watch what happens to my rectangle. Okay. My rectangle changed to those dimensions automatically. Okay. So that's something that people struggle with, is they think, oh, I got to, because we're so accustomed to having to click into a text box in order to enter text. But the way SketchUp is set up, once you draw a shape, SketchUp is pre-prepared to receive dimensions for that shape in that box. Okay. So that's that. So I've got my 35 foot by 25 foot rectangle. One other note to make mention of that your students are probably going to run into issues with is the order of these dimensions for a rectangle or square matters. If I would reverse the 35 and the 25, my rectangle would have, instead of being 35 feet along this red plane, would have been 35 feet long along the green plane and 25 feet wide along the red plane. So the order in which you enter dimensions matters. Okay. But it ultimately doesn't really matter, because what I can do is I can spin my drawing window any way that I want to orient my structure or my drawing. Okay. So that takes care of step number 2, A and B. I've drawn out a 35 foot by 25 foot rectangle. Now I'm going to come back over to my left-hand toolbar here, and I'm going to select the push-pull tool. And again, you get 3 options here. This is the push-pull toolbar. This is the follow me feature, which allows you to, like if you're going to put fencing around a property or something like that, it allows you to drag a feature out across the drawing just by following the mouse cursor. And the offset tool, which we'll use that later on in this process, but I want the push-pull tool. Okay. So again, I'm going to come over to my rectangle that I drew out. I'm going to click on the top of it, and I've released it again. I'm not holding the mouse button down. And now I'm not pushing any buttons. I'm just moving the mouse up and down, right? And extruding my shape. It's following it. I'm not holding the mouse button down. Okay. I'm just going to pull it up. I'm going to click once and it releases it. Okay. And again, just like when we made that rectangle down here in the distance bar, I'm not clicking my mouse in there. I'm not touching anything. Here are my hands, right? This distance window is ready to receive instructions, dimensional instructions that I provide for it as to how tall I want that rectangle to have been extruded. So again, I'm not touching anything. I'm not clicking anything. I'm just going to start typing in on my keyboard, and I want to make that building 10 feet tall. And I click enter. And it mustn't have been that far off of 10 feet because the picture didn't change that much. So that's how I set the dimensions of the basis for my building here. Okay, we made it 10 feet tall. And now we need to select the orbit button. The orbit button down here, which is the very bottom button on the left-hand toolbar. You're going to use this an awful lot. I already demonstrated this for you. Now I am clicking and holding my mouse button and then moving my mouse around to orient my drawing in a way that, you know, I can see it from the best perspective that I need to. So now I'm going to get ready to draw and create the roof of my structure. Okay. So in the instructions that I've provided, it says to take the orbit tool and spin your structure so that you're looking at it from one end of the building, right? So I've done that. And now I'm going to come up here to the line button in my left-hand toolbar. Again, you've got a couple options. This is for making straight lines. This is for making freehand lines. I want to use the feature that makes straight lines. Okay, so I've got my line tool and my cursor turns into a pencil. So I'm not clicking anything. Okay, again, here are my hands. I'm not clicking mouse buttons. I'm going to take the line tool and I'm going to hover over one of my corners of the top edge. See, I'm not clicking anything. I'm going to move it. It happens the same way if I move it over to this end. So one of the corners, okay, and I'm going to click once. I've released, and now I'm dragging, and I'm not touching anything. I'm not clicking anything. I just drag my cursor towards the middle of my top edge. And if you see, when I find that midpoint, so what it's doing is, again, I'm not holding the mouse button down, but it's dragging a straight line between the starting point and the end point. So I'm going to click there, and I've created a line, and you can't see it because it's blended in with the top edge of the building. Okay. Now I still have my line tool selected. So I'm just clicking once, releasing, and I'm going to click again, and my line is now ready to receive dimensional instructions. So I didn't click in that window. I'm just typing 5 feet, enter, and it adjusts my line to be 5 feet. So now I need to click at the top of this line that I just drew and watch what happens when I reconnect it to the corner that I started at. Okay. It creates half of my roof. So if I come back up to the top edge of this half of a roof that I made before, I click, I release, and I come back over to this corner and I click and release. There's the top of my roof. Okay. Now, as far as Google SketchUp is concerned, this roof is still split into 2 halves, right? So if I were to, what I'm going to do here in a second is I'm going to drag this roof over top of the rest of the building. But if I were to try to do it right now, it's going to drag this half or this half of my roof along. So what I need to do is I need to get rid of that line that's dividing my roof in half. And there's a couple different options. One, I can just take the mouse cursor and click on the line and hit delete. But I want to draw your attention to the eraser feature over here. If I click that, and these instructions, of course, are in the step-by-step guide that I've created for you to use with students. The intent is to get them exposed to as many different buttons and features and everything as possible. So if I select the eraser button, my mouse cursor turns into an eraser. I'm going to click and hold my mouse button on one side of the line. I'm going to move my cursor across that line, and I'm going to release, and look what happens to the line when I release my mouse button. It erases it. So that's, again, there's a couple different ways. You can just click on things, click on lines, click on circles, click on objects, hit the delete button on your keypad, but you can also use this eraser feature to erase items out of your drawing. Okay. So I've made my roof. one full roof. And now, as the instructions say, I need to spin and orbit my building so that I'm kind of looking at it from this direction. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I just need to catch up to my directions here. I'm going to now select the push-pull tool over here again. Okay, this is a very, very commonly used feature that students are going to use quite a bit. I'm going to click once on the inside of my roof triangle and watch what happens when I'm not holding the mouse button down. I'm just clicking, or I'm just moving the mouse and not holding any buttons down. I am going to click to release. And again, my dimensions window is ready to receive dimensional instructions as to how far I wanted to drag that object. Well, I want it to cover my whole building. And if you remember, the building was 35 feet long. So I'm going to put 35 feet in that window and click enter. And there it is. It covers every bit of my building.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
John, what would happen if you clicked, let's say, 37 feet?
So, let's see, third, we got to, let's reverse that back. Okay. And click, and we'll say 37 foot. Now you can see it extends
Okay.
2 feet past. And I'm going to show you an impromptu, and so also another reason it's good to have an external mouse. As you see now, I'm zooming in and out, and I'm doing that simply by moving the scroll button on my mouse. I'm going to use this hand feature and kind of grab that down there a little bit. So let's say, Marty, you did go a little bit too far, but you want to find out how far you went. If you come down and select this tape measure tool,
Okay.
much like in real life, and I come up here and I click there and I click there, it tells me in that window down there that I went 2 feet further than I wanted to. So there's a lot of handy dandy tools that you can use, much like in real life, where if I need to find an unknown dimension, I just take a tape measure and measure it on an unknown dimension. Okay. So as a repeat, as per the directions of my step-by-step guide, I'm going to do 35 feet, and that closes my roof entirely to the building. Now, I think, Marty, were you kind of wondering, well, what about it? What if you want to put eaves on your building?
Well, I was just wanting to know if you had to be exact or if it would show you that you forgot what dimension you put in there.
Yep, it
Okay.
does whatever you tell it to do. And then like I said, if you don't remember what the dimension that you made that building was, you could always just take your tape measure, click, oh, that was 35 feet long. And then you'll know how wide to set your the dimension for your roof then.
Okay.
So now we're going to get to a step that is a little bit on the tricky side, and it's especially tricky for somebody that's trying to follow black and white text directions. So if you're able to do like I'm doing and walk your students through maybe this first exercise, that would be great, or record yourself doing it, because this is a step that I've done my best to try to explain using text, but it's a little bit awkward to understand. Okay. So in the directions, it says now use the orbit button and turn your, spin your structure so that you're looking up from it from the bottom. Okay. Maybe just slightly angled. Okay. And now this is where I've directed them to practice using the offset tool, which is not there. It's here. Okay, so I'm coming over. It's housed within the push-pull tool, but I'm going to select this bottom one called offset. And what this does, if you notice, I gotta spin here. Select this bottom. Okay, now I'm going to come over and get my offset tool. So I'm going to click on one edge of the bottom of my building, and I'm not holding anything in. I just clicked and released. But now if I move my cursor inside of that bottom rectangle, it creates an offset rectangle within the rectangle that's already there. By the same token, I can extend my floor outwards if I wanted to. Just to do something wild, I'm going to show you. I'm going to click, and now this is what you'll find in SketchUp is there's more than one way to do any one thing. So if I wanted to add a yard around my building, well, I just did it, right? I did it very quick and easily. But that's not what I wanted to do. That's not the point in doing this step of the exercise. I want to show you how to make eaves on a building rather quickly and easily to, again, ramp up the realism of the structure. So I'm going to click and release. And again, my measurement window is ready to receive instructions from me as to how far in I want to offset that inner rectangle. So I want to make 1 inch, 1 foot long eaves underneath the structure, underneath my roof. So I'm going to type 1 foot mark, hit enter, and it offset that inside rectangle by 1 foot. Okay. So this is the part that blows students' minds and is a little bit difficult to follow through. Okay, so I'm going to orient my building in such a way that you can kind of see it happening in real time. So what I have here, I have an inside rectangle, and then I have this outside, and then I have this outside perimeter of my structure. And what I want to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to use the push-pull tool, and I'm going to slide that outside skirt of my building upwards towards the roof to create some roof overhang. So I need to come here and get my push-pull tool and watch what happens here. I'm sliding that outside of the building up. I don't want to go quite that far. Up towards my roof. I'm going to click and release. And if you remember, the height of my building is 10 feet. If I go all the way up there, it's actually going to possibly delete the bottom side of my roof. So what I'm going to do in my dimensions window is put 9 feet, 11 inches to come just within an inch of touching the very top face of my roof. And now my building has some eaves, some roof overhang. And as you can see there, at some point I deleted the one end of my building, but I have no fear, because if I just come back here and I click, it put it back for me. So now you got a structure in pretty short order. And when you get more comfortable with this, and when your students get more comfortable with this, you can have a basic building structure like this done in 5 minutes flat, easy. We're taking a little bit longer here because I'm jabbering as we go. So we've created the eaves of our building. And now that comes to the end of the formalized instructions, so to speak. Now it's basically just kind of watch and learn a few things. So I'm going to slide my participant window over here. And now I want to direct you to this right-hand toolbar. And I put these instructions in your version of these directions that I sent for you to use with students. Two main features over here that we're going to highlight. Up here are some self-help tutorials that you can direct your students to use if they want to figure out how to use different features. Down here, if you want to tag certain components of it, if you want to create different views of your drawing when it's all said and done, and you can also make a walkthrough movie. This has ended up being quite helpful in creating landscape designs where you can actually take your mouse cursor, and if you create like a walkway through the landscape, if you move your mouse cursor down that walkway, SketchUp will take a movie of what you're seeing as you're walking through that landscape and create a movie that you could perhaps show a client when it's all said and done, to give them the impression of what it's going to be like to walk through their nice landscaped backyard when it's all done. Or if you're creating a building, you can go inside the building and do a walkthrough of the building, and it will capture video of that that you can again show a potential client or a customer what it's going to be like to walk through their building when it's all finished, right? But the two that I want to highlight to you here today is the Components tab and the Materials tab, or buttons, I should say. In the Components, it brings up what's called the 3D warehouse, which is going to be your best friend here. So I'm just going to type into the search bar there, wooden door. And what this is going to do is bring up all kinds of other drawings that other folks that are usually much better at this than we are, have done, and allows us to, all I did was click on that door right there because I want to put it on my building. Download taking. So now look at that. Now I bought that door that somebody else spent time and money, or time and energy in creating, and I'm going to put it on my house. Okay. Now this can be a little bit goofy at times because, all right, so that did put it right on my house there. So now I'm going to click off of that, and look at that. In no time whatsoever, I put a nice door that looks pretty realistic onto my building. So now I'm going to put a in my house. Okay, let's take this one right here. And unfortunately, that is it backwards? Okay. So I'm just going to click and put it right there for right now. We got to do a little bit of spinning around here. Yeah, let's see. So this is a good opportunity to show you. You can take these objects then and where are we here? Right here. We need to rotate that. I'm going to rotate it around. Okay, so it'll sit flat on my door. Now I got to come, or on my wall, I got to come back here to the move, get the move button, which this is the part that can be somewhat frustrating at times, is getting these objects into position. But in all reality, it still doesn't take very long. See, I need to slide it there. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to plop it onto my house there. But you get the point, right? You can take a whole thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of different drawings that other people have done and incorporate them into your house or your drawing very quickly and easily. So that's the 3D warehouse, and you can literally find anything in there. The other feature I wanted to show you is the materials feature. Okay, so if I go in here to the search window, now I'm just going to go to the home thing here for the sake of time. What is going on here? I think I did need to go into the search. Yep, there it is. So I want to put some actual material coverings on this house. So I'm going to put some shingles. So I come into the roofing options there, and those shingles look great. All I'm going to do is click. Okay, and I need to spin and come back here, select my shingles, click, and there's that. If I come up here to where is the siding? Okay, I'm going to put some brown siding all over my house here. Okay. Finish this off there. Now, in reality, I would cut this window out, and so that you could see on the inside of it, which I'll show you real quickly. It's not going to work though, because I didn't hollow out the inside of my house. But you can hollow the inside of the house out and cut the window opening out, and then put furniture and stuff inside of the window, so it looks like it's a real house. Again, if I wanted to quickly put a yard on this property, I can come back around here now and come to my landscaping and vegetation, and I now have a yard right around it. So again, this is very, very, very quick and simplistic, but I just want to show you, once you get the hang of the different features and stuff that are in SketchUp, you can do a lot really nicely, really quickly for free, and students can do it from home, right? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing at this particular point and ask if there's any questions that anybody has about anything that I covered. Okay, so give me a second here. I'm going to pull up some quick examples. And again, you will have access to all of these through the Google folder that I am going to provide all of you. So here are some more real quick examples that I've thrown together for teaching's sake. There's a bolt that I made. Another structure and landscape example with a driveway. Here's another view of it. See, I hollowed that window out, and you can actually see to the inside of that structure. Here's the back patio view of that, and here's one I did with a more of a hardscape application with a pool. This is a little bit more along. So, you know, the landscapes that we've done, as far as those big, $200,000+ ones, we're talking days and days and days and days of drawing those. So this probably took me about, I'd say, 2 hours when it was all said and done. Obviously, it's not it's not the most realistic thing. It doesn't have all the elements in it that you would want to see. It's just a quick example that I threw together for the sake of time. But when you or your students get the hang of this and really practice this, they'll be able to do some really impressive stuff. Okay. All right. So I think am I still sharing my screen?
No,
Did you see any of those examples?
we did. Not now.
Okay. I wonder how I stopped sharing my screen. Okay. So here are the assignments that I put together by content area. And I'm going to shoot all of these out to you in the follow-up email. For every one of them, I threw the same little mission or purpose statement in there, about the importance of understanding and learning concepts and basics of 3D drawing in today's workforce and job market. You can couple 3D drawing with 3D printing. So for instance, that bolt that I created, the drawing of the bolt, if I save that file, when you export, and here, I'll quickly show you. When you come up here to your drawing screen and you come up and click on this file tab here, when you want to export your drawing of anything, you can export it as a picture file or an STL file. Okay. I don't know what funny names down here are, but basically you download it as an image, or STL file is the type of file that you need to be exporting it as if you want to 3D print it. So I drew that bolt. I created that bolt in SketchUp. I can actually 3D print that bolt on a 3D printer if I would download it as an STL file. So lots and lots and lots of different cool and very applicable things that can be done with your 3D drawings. They're not just pretty pictures to sell construction jobs or project jobs or something like that. You can actually custom design and then custom print out a gadget, a piece of hardware, a fastener that you've custom created for a specific application. So lots of cool things. So for animal science, I have in this assignment that they are to design and draw an animal housing facility for a species of their choice. This requires them to do a little bit of research on the species that they're going to do. They need to do a little bit of pre-planning, figure out how many animals of whatever species they choose that they want to house in that facility, and then they draw it. So for example, if they want to do a horse stable that houses 10 horses, well, then they need to make the facility, the dimensions and the square footage that it's going to accommodate, 10 horse stalls, or at least a square footage for 10 horses to be in comfortably and humanely. And of course, if they want to include other things like a riding arena in that facility, then if they need to accommodate, provide the square footage that's going to accommodate all of those features appropriately. And I put here just some examples, which the possibilities are endless of, if they're going to do calving pens, a milk house, tack room, that should all be included. The goal of this assignment is for them to plan, design, and then ultimately draw a facility that's as realistic looking as possible. They need to indicate the dimensions, which is one thing I forgot to show you, which I'll show you really quickly. how to put dimensions into a drawing. You know, and in a sort of their follow-up report, they need to also list the number of animals of that species that they can safely house in it, accurately depict the materials. If it's going to be a metal siding building, use metal siding. If it's going to be a stable made out of wood, well, then it should be wood. If there's a post that's made out of wood, make the post in the drawing out of wood. Also include any kind of equipment and auxiliary features such as ventilation fans. If they're going to have tunnel ventilation, look in the 3D warehouse. There's tunnel ventilation fans in the 3D warehouse. I'll show you a couple other cool things that pertain to one of the other assignments as we move down here. They should keep in mind access routes. You know, very rarely is a building just sitting out in the middle of nowhere. There's usually sidewalks, there's usually driveways, that they should include any kinds of access routes, both for vehicles, pedestrians, animals. You know, make the image and make the drawing look as realistic as they possibly can. Include doors, include windows, and as an added bonus, I don't know what you folks are, I've heard a lot of people say, you know, no extra credit, you know, pass fails are limited to do right now. But I think an added bonus is to put some surrounding trees, put some animals, put some actual cows, put some actual horses in the building, put a tractor sitting next to the barn. Make it look as realistic as possible, but you're free to toy around and adjust these assignments as much as you like. For the plant science horticulture end of things, create a greenhouse that's specifically designed to accommodate a crop of their choice. Again, they should actually show some examples of those plants inside the greenhouse. They should show watering systems, ventilation fans, heating units, the whole 9 yards. And again, the variables that they should consider are all there. For the wildlife, natural resource management side of things, create a barn owl, do a drawing of a barn owl box plan. Do a bat box drawing, create a deer feeder, or some other type of wildlife feeder, but do the 3-dimensional drawing of it that shows dimensions and whatnot, and make it out of realistic materials. If there's going to be corn in the deer feeder, look in a 3D warehouse for some corn, put some actual corn in it, make it look realistic. The key here is that they need to design the project realistically. So if the Pennsylvania Game Commission recommends making a barn owl box 5 foot by 5 foot by 3 foot, then that's what they should make their actual 3D drawing. And that they should also do some research and indicate how, if they're going to make a bat box, what is the number of bats that they should be able to realistically accommodate with whatever they build. So, we're making wildlife support structures is what I called them. Projects that they could design and actually make in a shop and then put out in the wild and out in nature to aid and assist wildlife. For the ag mechanics welding end of things, they kind of have two choices. They design a mechanical facility, either a welding fabrication facility, a mechanical repair shop, a woodworking shop, or any kind of specific project design that they would like. So if they want to design a log splitter, do the 3D drawing of a log splitter, show the different components, show the hydraulic cylinder on the log splitter, show the dimensions of the log splitter, and then also indicate where different welds need to occur on the project. You should not just see two pieces of a structure fitting together in your project plan without specific fasteners listed or specific welds listed, and include dimensions again, which I'll show you here in a second, and everything that they want to include in that facility: welders, bench grinders, drill presses, table saws, material storage racks, everything that's going to be in their sort of dream shop should be included. And then they should also be considering this is a great opportunity for them to include OSHA space recommendations and OSHA, taping and marking on the floor to designate safety or danger areas that are going to be in this facility according to OSHA rules and regulations. They should include lights, they should include windows, workbenches, tables, and if drawing a project, again, include the project dimensions, the weld types, the fastener types. Are they flathead, machine screws? Are they, hex cap bolts? Are they wood screws? Are they Phillips? Whatever. Those should be labeled. And putting labels into a drawing is very, very easy. I'll show you that here in a second. And then also, if doing a project drawing, they should include a bill of materials. But again, this is just the framework for a couple different Google SketchUp assignments. I'm going to leave the flexibility. You take that, that's just the foundation. You adjust it however you see fit for your specific students and classes. Okay. So real quickly, something I forgot to mention, putting dimensions in. If I come down here to my tape measure window again, and I click the one right below the tape measure, let's say I want to show how wide my building is. Okay, click, and if I pull off, there's a dimension bar. Okay, show the dimensions, 33 feet by 23 feet, because if you remember, we took a foot off of each. Let's say I want to show the dimensions of my door, right? So you can very quickly and easily show the dimensions of various aspects of your drawing, okay? And then similarly, if I want to include a note, a box, label parts of my drawing, I just select that other feature there, and I can label different parts of the drawing. Okay. All right. So I know that was a whole lot of me talking at you, a whole lot of stuff for you to sit there and watch real quick. If you were trying to follow along with that, I apologize. I know that's probably very difficult. But I hope that you're walking away from today's session with a Google SketchUp account so that you're at least comfortable with how to set your students up with the free version of the account, a really basic understanding of how to use the very common features in Google SketchUp, that you have an appreciation and an understanding for what the different possibilities are with Google SketchUp. And I've hopefully given you the foundation for some assignments that, in all honesty, each of those projects that I put together for the different content areas, you could very, very easily finish out the end of your school years having students do that stuff. I know that you're responsible for doing daily instructional time as well. But if you wanted a really long-term ongoing project to keep your students busy and have something to do at home, they could very easily spend the rest of their school year on those facility design assignments. So hopefully I've given you something to, the foundation for some activities that you can use to get your students engaged with and comfortable with Google SketchUp. And we're right at the end of our hour time here. So if there's any comments, questions, concerns that you have, I'd be happy to entertain those at this time.
You're going to send out the instructions, correct?
Yep. Everything that I shared with you today is in a Google folder, and I'm going to send that link out in an email immediately following this session. And I'm always here. I Zoomed with Gene Case's class for the Ag STEM Challenge earlier in March, actually on March 13th, which was our last day at work before all of this hit. I Zoomed in with her class and walked their class through how to use Google SketchUp. I'd be happy to work with each of you individually, one-on-one, on Google SketchUp problems or questions. I'm here. I'm here as a resource. I don't know everything. Like I said, there is the instructor feature in Google SketchUp that you can use and your students can use individually. There's YouTube videos out there. Lots and lots and lots of instructional resources and support on Google SketchUp. Anybody have any other questions or concerns?
Thanks, John. Good job.
Absolutely. I hope it's helpful. All right. Well, it's 11 o'clock on the dot. If nobody has anything else, feel free to hop off. I'm going to stop the recording here.